Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, so we'll begin the sloka recitation with our prayers and obeisances to the lordships of Sri Jagannath Mandir. बलदेवा प्रभु की जय, सुभद्रा महारानी की जय, लॉर्ड जगन्नाथ की जय, गौर निताई की जय, पंचतत्वा की जय, लॉर्ड वामन देव की जय है. Hare Krishna. Okay, so we'll see our prayers. ओम ज्ञानातिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने. नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्त वृंदा. हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. So today we are in we are in chapter 8. We are going to read shloka 8.2 for today. Second. Agnir Jyotir Aha Shukla Shanmasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayata Gachanti Brahma Vido Janaha Uttarayanam. Okay, translation. Those who know the Supreme Brahman attain that Supreme by passing away from the world during the influence of the fiery God in the light at an auspicious moment of the day, during the fortnight of the waxing moon, or during the 6 months when the sun travels in the north. Okay, so this is an ongoing discussion, and so what was previously discussed is about the transcendental world, and in this shloka we are talking about getting liberated or leaving the body. More like we're leaving it. This is for people who are leaving it to chance. It might or might not happen, and then there is a system for devotees where they don't leave anything to chance, and this is about getting liberated. And so there is a spiritual world and there is a material world. So previously what was discussed is that so we are familiar with this thing. Sometimes we have experienced that when we look towards the sky, sometimes we see it covered by the clouds, but the clouds cannot cover the entire whole sky. It is not possible because cloud doesn't have the power to do it. It is very insignificant compared to the sky, which is gigantic. And so it is able to cover only insignificant portion of the sky. The cloud is able to cover that. Similarly, when some portion of the unlimited spiritual sky is covered by Mahat Tattva, Srila Prabhupada says when it is covered by Mahat Tattva or a spiritual cloud, that portion which is covered, it is called the material sky. And the transcendental world is above this material sky. The material sky is also a part of the transcendental sky or spiritual sky, but it is that portion which is covered. And this material sky is meant for the conditioned souls, people who are like us, who are in this material world now. We are the conditioned souls and we are in this material sky, and this place is meant for us. So this is more like it is compared to a prison house, which is an insignificant portion of the certain area of the state, and it is walled and protected so that prisoners don't escape. Similarly, this material manifestation is only a very insignificant portion of this spiritual sky, and it is covered so that it's not possible for anyone to escape to the spiritual sky. So it will not happen just like that. Anybody can escape. So this is a very well-planned system, and we are here for a reason. And so people who are in this material world, who are in this material sky, we cannot even travel in the outer space of this material sky. So Srila Prabhupada says that we cannot even travel in the outer space of the material sky, and let alone going through the entire gigantic material sky, or to the spiritual sky, which is even more, 3 times more. This spiritual world is 3/4, material world is 1/4. So we are conditioned, and in this conditioned state, we have got very limited potency. So in the spiritual sky, there are innumerable spiritual planets. So Srila Prabhupada has given a very wonderful explanation about all these spiritual planets in Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srila Prabhupada says that on each planet, the Lord is manifested. This information is given in Bhagavad Gita, Purusha Sa Paraha Partha. And that spiritual sky, the predominating personality of Godhead is transcendental. So this is compared to countries. For example, in every country there is a predominating personality. It could be a president, prime minister, or somebody in power. Similarly, in every spiritual planet there is a predominating personality of Godhead. In the material world, we experience that there are rivals. We see that one political party and their candidates against another political party and their candidates, but there is no such thing in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, in the spiritual sky, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is supreme, and he has no rival. And all those souls who wanted to become rival, they are put into this material sky under the conditions of the material nature. And so this is the difference between spiritual sky and material sky. In the spiritual planets, in the spiritual sky, there are inhabitants, there are people, there are inhabitants who are not rivals but are liberated souls. So this is about this shloka is talking about getting liberated but leaving it to a chance. But then here a complete system is mentioned, and for especially for devotees, they don't leave it to chance. So earlier, I think it was discussed the different types of liberation the living entities are eligible for, or they have a choice, they can strive for it. And there are different kinds of liberation, like for example, Sarupya, Salokya, Sarishti, Samipya, and Sayujya. So Sarupya is when you get the body exactly like God. Salokya is living in the same planet as the Lord. Sarishti is similar opulence as the God, and that is as powerful as God is. Samipya, you can always remain with God as one of his associates. Srila Prabhupada gives example of Arjuna. Arjuna is always with Krishna as his friend. That is a relationship with Krishna. And so Sayujya Mukti, which is particularly mentioned by leaving it to chance in this particular shloka. Sayujya Mukti is to merge into the impersonal effulgence of the God. So we know that there are 3 types of God realization: Brahman, that is Brahma Jyoti, impersonal realization; Paramatma, or localized or super soul realization; and Bhagwan is a complete realization, where a devotee has opportunity to serve the Lord, and through that process one can, by performing devotional service and achieving perfection in that, he can have that Bhagwan realization. So Srila Prabhupada says that there are 2 schools of philosophers: Mayavada school philosophy, which is impersonalist philosophy. So the impersonalists always want to merge his individual identity into the existence of the supreme impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord. Into the existence of the Supreme Lord, that is impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord, and which is called Brahman, Brahma Jyoti. And this is impersonal realization. And so by doing so, one impersonalist tries to close his individual identity. But this merging is very risky and disliked by devotees or Vaishnavas. And according to Vaishnava philosophy, we belong to the Vaishnava philosophical school. So Vaishnava means we want to worship God as he is. So he is the master, we are the servant, and in that relationship we serve, and we eternally want to keep our identity separate. That is, we want to maintain our individual identity. Why? Because we want to serve the Supreme Lord, and in that individual identity, eternally we can serve the Supreme Lord. So So out of the five, Sayujya Mukti, or the liberation by merging into the existence of the Supreme, is not accepted by the Vaishnava philosophers. And neither the Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the Bhagavad Gita, in his explanation to Arjuna, he never says, he never encourages this, nor the Vaishnava philosophers recommend or accept to merge or close their individual identity. And the reason we mentioned that they want to serve the Supreme Lord. Lord Chaitanya also, he prayed and he said that a pure devotee, unadulterated devotee of the Lord, they do not care where they are. That is, if they happen to take birth in animal society, human society, or demigod society, or any kind of society, um, they don't want or care for liberation. But what they want is to always remember the Supreme Lord, so that they can remain their pure devotee birth after birth, so that they can be engaged in Krishna consciousness to serve the Supreme Lord. That is their desire. So otherwise, what it means is, when you're liberated, there is no birth. Either whether you remain in the spiritual planet or you merge in the existence of the Supreme, there is no more birth in this material world. So, so Lord Krishna says that if you want to become one of my associates in that spiritual planet, then you have to become a pure devotee, which means you can attain that perfection by devotional service and without any deviation. What would be the deviation? Deviation would be when we sometimes are inclined to become, sometimes when we are inclined to become a devotee for some material benefit, that would be deviation. And Ananya Bhakti, that is without any deviation, that is devotion or devotion service without any deviation, without any material profit. When we do that, then we can become a pure devotee. Then we can attain that spiritual planet. This is another liberation. So Lord Krishna says that this is for the devotees, this system, devotional service, and this entire system achieving perfection and practicing Krishna consciousness while here in this material world. When we are here, all the system which was explained about this liberation, different types of liberation, except for Sayujya Mukti, all others are for the devotee. Here, the devotee is always following a process of performing devotional service to the Supreme Lord. He is in Krishna consciousness, and to achieve that particular liberation, he does all this. He does this, and he automatically gets this liberation. Devotee is not leaving it to chance. Although he's not striving for this liberation, he wants service life after life. But because the system is such, this Krishna consciousness, that devotee is not leaving it to chance. He's not leaving it to chance. So this is perfection. He's striving for perfection. That is Krishna consciousness without any deviation. That is devotees are trying to do. Now, for ordinary persons, all those system was explained when in this particular shloka, where some of them are leaving it to chance, and so this is how it is. So for ordinary persons, there are some chances how to enter into that spiritual kingdom. So they are leaving it to chance. So devotees are not leaving it to chance. So Lord Krishna explained this to Arjuna. My dear Arjuna, there are different time indication of passing away from this material world. Yatra kale, the time. So we know that in India especially, when a person is born, his horoscope is made, and when a man dies, how he goes, how he's leaving the body, how he's going, what is his situation, and by astronomical calculation, those who are experts, they can say, they can confirm about him leaving the body, whether he'll take birth or not. So Krishna also accepting that principle, and is confirming here with that yatra kale tu anavritam. This was explained in the previous shloka. So there is a particular time, and if at that time a person leaves this material body, then he may become liberated. As mentioned, this is leaving it to chance. So he may become liberated. If that happens to be by chance, by accident, or by any other way, and that means he no more will take birth in this material world. Similarly, there is also a particular moment that if at that time a person leaves this material body, he will have to take birth, and he will have to come back into this material world. So this is when you're leaving it to chance. So for others, there are some chances like that. And a particular moment, if he leaves the body, then he can enter into the spiritual world. But for devotee, there is no such chance. He is surely, because the devotee is always practicing Krishna consciousness. Sada tad bhava bhavita. But because the devotee is always in Krishna consciousness, so there is no question of chance. For him, it is sure, he is guaranteed. So, so in this particular shloka, it is mentioned about the sun's movement. And if that in that particular moment when sun, then person leaves the body, then this is, he is sure to get liberated and not take birth again. So sun's movement, we know, is that there are different. In 6 months, it's on the northern side, and 6 months, it's on the southern side. And in Srimad Bhagavatam, we get this information that the sun is in the center of the universe, and all the other planets are moving, and the sun is also moving. And the sun's movement, according to Vedic calculation, is 16,000 miles per second. And so we can calculate and see that the sun's movement in the northern side and southern side. And in this shloka, what is mentioned is that, so when a person dies during this movement of the sun on the northern side, then he can attain liberation. That is stated in Bhagavad Gita and in other various Vedic scriptures. So here it is like, this is for others who don't want to practice Krishna consciousness and throughout their life, and they want to leave it to chance. So this is like, it is possible, but then it's might or might not happen. But if it happens to be during the sun's movement in northern side, well, they get liberated. So mystics also, they are advanced, who are advanced in yoga practice, can arrange to leave their body at a particular time, at a particular place, and they can leave the body. So it is possible for others to attain this impersonal Brahma Jyoti if they happen to leave the body during the sun's movement in the northern side. So others have no control over it. So, and again, it was mentioned that, however, for the pure devotee in Krishna consciousness, there is no fear of returning. Whether leaves the body at an auspicious or inauspicious moment, by accident or arrangement, he is sure, if he has perfected his life in Krishna consciousness, he is a pure devotee, then he goes back to the spiritual world. So, and then this will, in the next shloka, there will be further explanation when the sun's movement is in the southern side, what happens, and all that detail. So, Hare Krishna. I thank you all devotees for joining this morning chanting and sloka recitation session. Please continue to join again tomorrow for the next sloka. Hare Krishna. Shloka ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Hare Krishna. All glories to Vaishnava devotees. Thank you, Prabhuji.